All right, welcome to another episode of Masti with Satvik Saini. Tonight, I have a special guest. We have Krutika, a friend of mine who is a writer from Colorado. Krutika, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Satvik.
All right, Krutika, so you're a writer. Now walk
Right.
me through what that means to you and what does that mean? Like, are you a screenwriter? Are you want to be an author? Or what exactly does that mean in your industry?
So, yeah, writer is a very broad term. So basically, I do mostly screenwriting, but I'd like to say that I just work on more narrative pieces because that's just any type of storytelling device, right?
Hmm.
So I have a background in like screenwriting, but I also did playwriting in college and narrative prose in college, and uh, did different things in that same realm. So I would define myself as more of a narrative writer than a screenwriter.
So would you ever consider yourself becoming like an author with those stories? Like, would that be a goal of yours?
Um, it depends on what story. I think because I'm mainly a visual person, like I get very bored when I don't have something to look at. I think film for me makes more sense, so I'd like to be credited as like a writer for a movie.
Hmm.
But I've had stories where it would fit better in a novel, um, in the context of a novel, because you can just read it and you'll understand it. Because
Hmm.
in screenwriting, you have to convey everything that you want to convey through either the dialogue or visuals. There's no like omniscient being who's telling you exactly what's happening. You're kind of limited as to like how you're going to tell what this character's feeling or what's happening in the story. Um, yeah, I think it just depends on the story, type of story.
Hmm. So me being like I'm in a completely different industry than you. Like I'm a project manager
Right.
for an NBA app, a mobile app, right? So
Hmm.
as a writer, walk me through your creative process per se. Like let's say you have an idea, what happens? Like where do you go? Like what are some questions you ask yourself for the plot and
Uh,
how do you move that idea along kind of deal?
it's very chaotic, to be quite honest. I usually only get ideas from this. It's like my sweet spot is from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. Like
Wait,
that's the
seriously?
only time I get ideas. I don't know what's wrong. I can't think during the day. I'm physically not able to like manifest any original thought during the day. So my ideas only come in the middle of the night, and
Hmm.
I usually always just like write them down on my phone's app, or write them down in a book, or and I and every time I jot them down, it's not coherent at all. So the next morning, it's like a game where I have to figure out what I was trying to say, and then I I break it down basically. Like I go, okay, this is the characters that I want. This is how I want the character. My stories are typically character based rather than plot based. So this is where I want the character to start. This is what their goal is. This is where I want them to end up, and then I just break it down piece by piece,
Hmm.
like quickly, like jotting them down. Like if I show you my book, you'd be like, this makes absolutely no sense. And then I go in and I start writing, and then when start writing, I like talk to myself as I'm writing, so I can't do it around other people. And the thing is, I'm not actually like audible, so I'm just like, that's how I
So you're
write.
talking to
Because
yourself?
yeah, like it's like I'm performing as I'm writing the thing, like how I want it
Oh,
to be performed. Because being a performer as well, I write what I would want. I would write like things that I would want to play on my own. Whether I can play them or
ah,
not is a different question, but it's something that I would be interested in playing, and I write the way I would perform them in that, as like the main character or the side character, any of the characters. And so it just so happens that each character is just different variations of myself
Hmm.
because it's all based off like me basically.
Oh, I see, like the vision of the character, like how they would talk or their mannerisms
Yeah.
and how they would say things. So you project that onto your writing in a way.
Yeah, yeah, like and we all have like different, like we're different with our parents than we are with our friends, or we're different
Hmm.
with our colleagues than we are with our bosses. So it's like having those different parts of us play each other in a movie, and it's kind of like how I go about it. So it's still like me talking, um and then I'm playing these characters. So I'll be playing the boss, I'll be playing the colleague, but they're just how I would talk to different people,
Ah,
if that makes
interesting.
sense. Hmm.
Wait, so have you heard about that Japanese saying where they're like there's three identity, like there's three masks we wear? It's like
No.
the first, it's like peeling the onion layers of an individual. It's like the first mask you wear is what like your coworkers see, kind of like what's like the masses see.
Oh.
And the second mask is kind of like what your family might see, or even like a relationship, or like your closest
Hmm.
friends, like best friends. And the last mask, like peeled back, is only yourself, only your true
Wait, that's
identity.
so cool. That's the first I'm hearing about it. But yeah, that's a great way of doing it. It's just those different masks and having them be
Hmm.
characters interacting with each other.
That's kind of interesting way to think about it. Wait, so
Yeah.
going back to what you said regarding character
Hmm.
inception versus plot inception, could you explain to someone who's not like,
So so the standard is with most stories, but in this case screenplays, is that if you can clearly describe the plot of a movie or story, if you can
hmm
clearly describe the plot of a story, it's largely character based. So an example of this would be what's is Call Me by Your Name. I don't know if you've seen Call Me by Your Name,
mm,
or what's a name a movie that you can easily describe the plot to.
The Dark
I'll try
Knight?
to think of. Actually, The Dark Knight's a good example of how it's kind of both as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard plot, right? Batman and Joker have it out for each other. There's another guy named
Hmm.
Harvey Dent. I've not seen the movie in a long time, so this is an oversimplification of the movie. And then they fight. Typically, superhero movies are very plot driven, and they don't
Okay.
focus on the characters. But I think the Dark Knight trilogy is a great example of having both. So they say if you could describe the plot, it is character driven. So that shows, okay, the character. So Batman started as this kind of like hero thing, and he's kind of
Hmm.
and there's that big line in it, right? The what's that line? You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself
See
become the
yourself
villain.
become the villain. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
what a
that's a
line.
I right. So that kind of drives a whole his whole character of that story. Where he starts is very different from how it is when the movie ends, when he kind of surrenders the identity of Batman and he kills him basically.
Hmm.
Um, but then if you have if you can easily describe a character, it is a plot driven movie. So an example of this would be like Jurassic World. You can tell who Chris Pratt's character is. He's kind of like this gruff uh, dinosaur trainer, and he goes through all these events as a dinosaur trainer. But his character is largely the same at the beginning as it is at the end. But it's because it's focused more on the plot.
Oh, so if there isn't
Yeah.
as much of a character arc, it's more plot driven.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a
Oh.
good way of like differentiating it. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's
Hmm.
just a way of balancing it out, because if you have like both like a heavy plot and like really in-depth characters, it can kind of be a bit overwhelming. It's sometimes done really well. I think a good
Oh.
example of that would be like Captain America Civil War, because those are also largely character based, but there's also a lot happening in those movies.
Oh, so it's like a hard combination. Like you have to it's like a perfect storm. If you get it right, it's an amazing movie. But you could also
Not
have
necessarily. Yeah, it could be. Like Dark Knight's a good example of that. Like a lot of the superhero movies have a really good balance of that. Parasite is also a great example of that because there's a lot happening in that movie, but it's also very focused on the development of this family. So I think it just also depends on the writer, the actors, like what the movie's about. But yeah, that's like a major oversimplification of that.
oh, so because I'm a huge fan of The Dark Knight, like that's one of my favorite movies. So that's where I guess like Joker's character and Harvey Dent's character have that
Hmm.
amazing arc plus the plot.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
right. Yeah, The Dark Knight's a fantastic movie. I have
Hmm.
still have not seen the third one because
What?
I don't know why. I know I didn't. I the day I was gonna watch it, it's some like we just did not watch it, so I just never went back to it.
That's like one of my movies I can always go back to. Like I have a very few movies I can do that to, but like The Dark Knight's the one I can often go back to. But
I love those like kind of movies that are so good and you still enjoy them. And
mhm.
like being when I was in college and being a film student, it was so annoying to watch movies that weren't necessarily critically acclaimed, but you still enjoyed them. Or there's like a weird like elitist mentality behind like films, and I think superhero films are kind of like that middle ground where
Hmm.
you're allowed to enjoy them even if they're not necessarily well made. But The Dark Knight is really well made and it's enjoyable.
So what's in, I guess on that topic, what's one of your comfort movies, the one you could like watch over and over again, which has both great plot or character-driven stories?
I'm in the same boat as you. I like superhero movies a lot. I find them really enjoyable. Um, I I mean a lot of Bollywood movies.
Ooh,
Like they
name me one though.
like
Give me an example.
I love Humpty Sharma Ki Dhalania. Like I really really like
Oh,
that movie. But the it's so like basic. There's nothing special about the movie, but I just really like the movie.
wait, is that the one with Varun Dhawan and
Varun Dhawan, Alia
Alia
Bhatt,
Bhatt?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I think I know which one
It's
you're
a
talking
sweet
about.
movie.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
basically DDLJ but modern.
No, yeah, I feel you. I
Yeah.
think along those lines for me would be Ye Jivani Diwani. That's a movie I can probably watch. Or Zindagi Na Milne
Oh
Wala.
yeah, that's a fun movie. Yeah. Oh, that's such a good movie. Like Zoya Akhtar is like has somehow been able to like make mainstream content and yet still make them really well made movies. Like
Yeah,
Gully
for
Boy
sure.
was fantastic.
Oh, Gully Boy is very good.
I watched it so many times.
The second guy in Gully Boy is amazing. Like
Oh yeah,
the
he was
side
like
rapper.
a yeah, he was like a newcomer. I got excited that he was a Marathi guy in that movie, and then it turns out his dad was Islamophobic, and I was like, oh, no, thank you. There's so many like problems with like their families. Yeah, but yeah, I think that she's somehow able to like make
Hmm.
mainstream content, but still, and I think in Bollywood especially, there's either like mainstream or like good movies, and sometimes there's that little overlap, like in a Venn diagram. There's like overlap of like both, who like so like
Hmm.
Rajkumar Rao, Ayushmann Khurrana, Zoya Akhtar, they kind of fit in the middle, and then there's like the mainstream, which is like freaking
Hrithik Roshan.
uh yeah, like Shah Rukh Khan like
Oh
hitting
yeah.
on a 35-year-old when he's well over 50.
So, Krithika, on that topic, like we just talked about like a couple of Bollywood films, and then you obviously grew up, you were born and raised here as well. So where do you, from your writing style, where do you draw inspiration from, and like how do you blend like maybe Bollywood and Hollywood? Or do you at all? Or are you like, no,
Ooh.
fuck that. Are you just Hollywood or
Well,
Bollywood?
my main like goal, if I were to progress in this industry, which I certainly hope I do, my main goal is to normalize the Indian American experience, basically. Um, because I don't you might have also dealt with this like moving here from India and stuff, but it's either you're too American for this crowd or you're too
Hmm.
Indian for this crowd. But there's a lot of us that are just in the who are both Indian and
Yeah.
American. So there are different elements that we associate with our Indian background versus growing up in America. So I don't think it's necessarily like a Bollywood versus Hollywood thing. I think it's more of just this uh, clash of cultures thing.
Hmm.
So how do our mom's friends talk to us versus how are we seen at school, or just like the types of food that we eat at home. Like I'm sure your mom does the same. We predominantly eat Indian food at
Hmm.
home,
For sure.
but that one time where like my mom makes like pasta or something, it's like yes. But that's like a very specific like Indian American thing.
Hmm.
Like no other, like Indians won't probably care about that and Americans don't care about that. But there's so much of us in this country who've just been neglected in this industry for the most part in terms of representation. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's not a Bollywood versus Hollywood thing. It's more like an American and Indian thing.
Oh, I see. So combining the two cultures and like the way you grew up.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly. What was normal to me and what would be normal to you?
so as when we talk about like what's normal to you, could you give me an example of a story where you tied this experience? Or like I don't know if that's a secretive idea or if you don't want to touch up on that, but like
No.
just an idea.
A great example of this would be I've not would be like how Americans see arranged marriages.
Mm,
Um because they're like, oh, they sold a woman into like this home and it's this they she doesn't even know this man and all these things. And it's just funny like how they look down upon arranged marriages when they have courtships here and it's the exact same thing. But arranged marriages are just as successful as love marriages as well, or what
hmm.
normal marriages would be in America, because my parents knew each other for 4 days and they got married on the fifth day.
That's
And
yeah,
so
that's
and
crazy.
they've been
Similar for my parents. Yeah.
right, they've been married and happily for 25 years. So so like an example of that kind of like what's normal to me is that arranged marriage is normal. It's not condemned. There have been like circumstances where it's been problematic, but it's not really, it hasn't been like that for a while. Um, so I think that's like a good example of like how, uh, and then as like an American person, I would still want like a love marriage instead of an arranged marriage. I'd be open to an
Mm,
arranged marriage, but I prefer like a love marriage. So being open to both things and being able to have both things is kind of like being in the Indian American thing. And now even in India, they've pretty much like it's predominantly like love marriages now.
hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a good example of the kind of like Indian American thing versus American versus yeah.
I actually like that a lot because Indian marriages, like, yeah, we do like it's often the joke. Even in college, like my
Hmm.
buddies always mess around with me with saying Indian, and I like joke and retort back, yeah, I'm getting an arranged marriage every time I go to India, kind of deal. But they are actually so successful, and that's often like looked down upon. And it's
Hmm.
interesting that you say that, like you'd be open to it, but you prefer a love marriage. And even in India, like
Yeah.
the culture, I don't know if your cousins, like a lot of most of my cousins are having more love marriages now.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So then this might be a little off topic, but like, would you, like, what would make you, like, what point in life would you have to reach to consider arranged marriage? Or is it like, why do you prefer love? And is it
I
only because
think
it's organic kind of deal?
No, I think it's more just because I was raised in America and that has been kind of like pushed into my head like
Hmm.
this is how it's supposed to be. Um because the divorce rates are the exact same as for arranged marriages versus love marriages. They're pretty much the same. Um so I think it's just because like growing up in the US, people started having boyfriends at like 12 years old and my parents are like, what is happening? You're 12 years old. How are you in relationships? Um so I think it's because of that. But and I think if I were to consider arranged marriage, I'd have to be 23. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. It would depend on like where I am financially, where I am
Mm,
biologically. If the clock is ticking, I
yeah, the
gotta pop them
biological
out. I
clock.
gotta pop those kids out.
No, that's fair. I mean, a lot of people look at it that way. I mean, biologically
Yeah.
it matters, right? I mean, time is ticking.
Yeah.
It's way more important for you guys than it is for like me. But
hmm
you mentioned the divorce rates. What do you mean by that? I feel like Indians get way less divorced. The divorce rate's
No,
much less for Indians.
I just mean love versus arranged marriages, not necessarily Indian versus American. Let me
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Um yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're same for arranged marriages, or at least they're lower for arranged marriages than they are for
Yeah,
love
that's,
marriages.
oh, I thought you were saying like divorce rates in America versus India, and I was like, oh, I don't think they're remotely close.
Okay, yeah. No, 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 no. That is something completely different. In India, they're forced to stay together. That's a different,
True.
it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, that might be a little bit of the other side of the extreme. But then,
Right.
so you saying you being open to it, whatever, like would they have? This might be a little bit of like like a blunt question, but like, would you consider it with someone who grew up in India versus an Indian American, like kind of like us?
Um,
Do you see? Because like the cultures for you is almost different for someone who grew up ex currently in
yeah,
India.
I think it all depends on the person.
Mm,
I think I've gotten along more with people who have the same background as me,
okay.
but I mean, yeah, I think it just depends on the person. I don't know. Everybody's so different these days. Like it used to be like all the Indian kids are exactly the same, but
All right, I'm done grilling you about your arranged
okay.
marriage partners.
It's an
So,
interesting topic.
so for you, like destigmatizing Indian or maybe arranged marriages or that Indian American experience, what are some of like the pitfalls in your way or like the blockers in your way doing this in the entertainment industry?
I think it's just the matter of like other people not understanding. Americans might not understand the kind of hold our parents have over us. Because I mean, the both of us are in our 20s and we still have to listen to our parents. We still have to obey what they say. Like, it's not that, oh, we turned 18 and we're free.
Hmm.
And it'll never be like that. It'll be like that for the rest of our lives. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
Americans will necessarily understand things like that versus I don't think Indians would understand that, we still have our own um, livelihoods. We if we want, we can go and be in relationships with different people because still, like some people um,
Hmm.
are like against like live-in relationships in India and stuff like that, or like domestic partnerships. So it's just a matter of having the other people, not yeah, like the other cultures understand
Hmm.
rather because like we would understand, but not
Yeah, for
necessarily
sure.
all American people, all Indian people. Yeah,
I
so
see. So,
that's
and
kind of
how,
the downfall.
I see. So, how do you see the industry progressing towards this, in your opinion? Like you being a performer and a writer, and like going to
Yeah,
school in Chicago. Talk me through that.
I have no idea. I mean, diversity in this industry is definitely growing, um, and and a lot more and different cultures, different sexualities have definitely been more integrated in more recent films.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, it is going at a very slow pace. I, I think we just have to be a little bit patient for it. I think a great example of that would be like how the response to Never Have I Ever, which is a Mindy Kaling
Hmm.
show.
Yeah.
Um and like the I think people are so deprived of having Indian American representation that they wanted to identify with this one character so badly, and then when something did not fit, they got upset about it because it did not reflect their own experience. Um, for me personally, I'm gonna do what's honest to me. I'm able like the way I talk to my parents is definitely different than the way you talk to your parents,
Hmm.
um, or the relationships that I have with my friends or the relationships that you have with your friends. Everyone has different experiences, and the Indian American experience is not universal. In a general sense, I hope that people like kind of relate to some aspects, but it's just a matter of doing what's like honest to you as a writer. And I'm not going to be like, I don't know your life. I'm not going to write for
Hmm.
you. I'm going to talk from my own experience.
True, and it doesn't have to fit the shoe for every other Indian American kind of deal, right?
No, and I think people need to understand that as well, that it won't fit like their lifestyles.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm on the same page there. Where like from as far as like what I follow in entertainment and like the industry itself,
Hmm.
I think there has been a lot of change. And I think these types of things take gradual, slow change, and I think we're heading towards that. I mean, we had two shows this year representing like Indian Americans or even Indians on a larger scale. But like I thought Mindy Kaling's show Never Have Ever was a great start. Like it was awesome.
Hmm.
But I think
I've
Mindy
enjoyed it.
Kaling, I enjoyed it. It was a good laugh. It was like a good series to binge through. But I think Mindy Kaling thinks through the lens of like what white people would think about Indians. And I actually thought Indian
Mm,
matchmaking was more of an accurate representation, in my opinion. Because I think it was straight
yeah,
up. It showed us like the shitty parts of our culture and the great parts of our culture. Like
right.
obviously the marriage scene is very different for like the very rich, and that's what the show kind of showed. But I still think it like talked about a lot of things like the guys and girls look for and some of the hurdles they go through. So I thought that was a more accurate representation. But I was a fan of both.
Yeah,
That's
no,
my take.
I completely agree. And you know, and that kind of goes back to maybe Mindy Kaling's. I mean, I know she grew up in Massachusetts. I don't know what
Hmm.
the brown population in Massachusetts is. It's
There's
going
a
to be
decent
very
amount.
different from. Oh, was it? Okay, I don't know. No, because it's going to be like how someone would grow up in maybe like Ohio is going to be different from someone growing up in the Bay Area, you know? So like
Hmm.
maybe was in a she grew up in a predominantly very like white environment, but I don't know, I can't speak for her. So yeah, I totally can see that she is catering to kind of both the Indian audience and the white audience.
Hmm.
um and I also think that that also might be because, you know, she's got the office clout and people are going to watch, like her white audience is going to like
Yeah.
watch her from the office and then watch her stuff on like the Mindy project or something. And then the Indian matchmaking show is also a very specific um like a specific category, like really rich people, little racist, well, not racist, but like colorist. Um, but I think at the end of the day, if you're making a TV show or if you're making a movie, it has to be entertaining.
Hmm.
If you made something honest to life, like I, that would be so boring. It has to be entertaining. There has to be
Uh,
some kind of drama. There has to be some kind of conflict of some sort. So even if it may not be realistic to us, that's because at least I do. I live a very boring life.
no, for
Um,
sure. That's a good point.
yeah,
Reality is boring and you have to dramatize it. And I mean, cash, like money, you have to make it attractive to get the most money, the whole thing. You have
yeah,
to follow the money kind of deal. So
definitely.
so now I guess moving on to a related topic in this way, like money in the industry, like coronavirus hit the industry pretty hard. And you
Right.
performed in college, you did a lot of shows, you also
Hmm.
wrote a bunch. So how do you think this impacted the industry from both a writer perspective and a performer? And how do you see this moving forward?
Um, I don't really know how I see it moving forward. I know slowly productions have started going up. Basically in March, this March 16th, everything shut down.
Hmm.
Like I had shows, I because I was in the Second City Conservatory, and the week that we were supposed to have like casting directors, talent agents come to our shows, we were not able to perform that. It was literally the show that they were supposed to come. It was that day where March 16th, which was incredibly frustrating for like everyone on my in my ensemble. And like
Is
obviously you,
March is March like the most like recruiting season kind of deal for performers?
no, not necessarily.
Whoa.
I mean, this is just they work on a term basis, and this was at the end of the term.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Usually, like if you're in the television industry, casting usually happens around like January, February,
Hmm.
and then again, they like those are like it's called pilot season, January, February, and like maybe I think like September, August. And then so yeah, that's when typically people would get casted, but this was just like more of a term thing. And all production shut down. I had some friends who had everything, who had lined up. I had a friend of mine who literally was like in the talks of selling a script, and and nobody wants to put money down when nobody really knows what's going to happen. Production companies have already lost so much money,
Hmm.
because the movies that they had already planned to shoot like during the summer and everything had to get postponed, and every day that goes by they lose money. So now they're trying to like get those out, like get those films done that they had already planned, but I don't know if they're starting on newer productions, which is where I would come in.
Okay.
Because I haven't been involved since like I haven't been professionally involved since uh like in 2019, where all of these were like probably, you know, finally taken off the table and sent to production companies.
Hmm.
So I mean, I don't really know like how it would change. I hope that eventually they kind of, once they get comfortable with how they're shooting now, maybe it'll kind of progress, but you still can't have crowds, you can't have extras or whatever. So I don't really know how they're doing it even now, but
Oh, so I guess maybe I can reword the question here or reword the top.
oh, okay, sorry.
Like in a way, what are some shitty parts about the industry in your eyes as a performer, and like what are some things you wish would change or hope for change? Maybe not even related to Corona in general.
Oh, you know, I mean, for me personally, it's just a matter of getting your foot through the door. And that's what I'm
Hmm.
struggling with, like as a recent college graduate. And I mean, I graduated college at the worst time, but
Probably in history, like honestly.
seriously. But like like getting that foot through the door. Now if you have a connection with someone, if you have a dad in the industry, or if you have which is a whole other discussion, but if you know someone in the industry, it's easier to get your foot through the door.
Hmm.
um Versus and nobody wants to listen to some random person who's just like, I have this really good script, because they're getting scripts like so much, like they're getting so many scripts a day,
I mean,
and
I
they're
bet.
getting so many pitches a day, and they're probably going through, and like casting agencies are probably going through like a lot of actors self tapes every day, so it's so oversaturated that it'll be hard for someone like me to be noticed.
I see.
So that, I think that's where it kind of gets difficult, but the beauty about like being in 2020 is that we have so much access to everything online. We have uh, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is a great example of like just putting your content out there and having
True.
random people see it, even if they don't follow you. So it's just a matter of trying to be seen and and relying on your audience to kind of like push that further. And if you don't have that audience, it's okay, where do you go from there?
I see. Maybe even building an
Hmm.
audience or having snippets of your stories somehow incorporated in social media, things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, so walk me through like a day in your life where like you're trying to get your foot through the door. How does that work? And like how are you sending, how does this whole process work? Like I know, do you have an agent, and like how does like the business side of it plus your creative side?
So my writing side is very different from my acting side. It just so happens that I'm doing both. They're not directly correlated.
Okay.
Um, um, I I did performing more as a enjoyable thing for me to get out of my head. And I do writing is just because I love it, and that's what I've been learning for the longest time.
Okay.
Um, so in terms of my acting experience, I get an email from my agency. My agent's like, hey, we have a great audition for you, send us this, da da da, and then they send the sides, and then they said get it by this time. I film it. I mean, I memorize the script, I film it, and then I send it off, and that's pretty much it. I've done my part. It's
Ooh,
yeah,
relatively
and then
straightforward.
yeah, and then if they see it, if they like it, then great. If they don't like it, then I don't hear anything, and it's just like, all right, next one. Um, which and so and you don't even and in the case that they do like it, they'll call you back, and then they'll fly you out to wherever they are and stuff like that. And then on the writing side, it's more just creating content. I at least have some things under my belt that I can use to kind of like push myself forward. But
Hmm.
I, as an artist, having completed content that you're willing to share to people is a very difficult thing to do. So I've just been trying to like submit proposals, trying to submit pitches to like, and there are websites available that that will be like, okay, if you pay us $30, we'll give your pitch to this judge or whatever, and we'll set up these competitions and stuff. And the ones that I've been going are legit, I think. Um, so yeah, it's just a matter of trying to force yourself to get seen. That's literally it. It doesn't even matter of like how good you could be or how bad you are.
Hmm.
It's just being seen.
Getting like most like getting the most number of eyes on your stories and whatnot, right?
Yeah, yeah, or even just one, but even just having like one pair of eyes would be enough if if they see something in you, right?
Okay.
You could have 100 people look at your work, but if none of them give a shit, then like
Hmm.
then it wouldn't make a difference if like it wasn't seen at all.
No, I see what you're saying. And
Yeah.
then following up, and you said like, oh, it's very hard to like send your full work in. Is this, are you worried like someone might rip off your idea kind of deal?
Oh, 100%. I have only
Ah,
copyrighted like one of my works. And even when I'm applying to jobs and stuff, like they're like, send samples of your work. And I'm like, no, if you want, I will send them like upon like further inquiry. I'm not gonna just like post them on LinkedIn. Because I don't
oh,
want people to steal my work. And also it's a matter of comfort, even if I'm not entirely confident in what I want to show, or if I don't really know like what the company's like angle is, if because I might have a sample that has a lot of swear words or doesn't fit the tone that this
hmm,
specific company is in. You don't know what you want to share. um
ah.
so yeah, so like the sample thing is a little weird, and I haven't really figured out how I should do that because I don't feel comfortable um with sharing all of my work with random companies that are just going to read my resume and move on.
Oh, so that's something that you're actively like worried and scared about.
Hmm.
Like, oh shit, they could take my work and take my credit. So how is, so let's say like I'm thinking from a business perspective, right? That's the industry I'm in. It's like we have a resume that we kind of
Right,
send and it has all of our shit there. For you, like
right.
how would you like entice them with like a two like teaser about your story kind of deal? Like how does that work?
um
What does a sample include?
so I've just been sending excerpts when I do send my samples. I usually before I send my samples, I'm like, okay, I'm proficient in this. I have a background in writing this. I'm happy to send samples upon further inquiry. And then whenever they say, yes, please send us your samples, we're interested, I just send them like five, 5 page, um, 5 page samples of like a script or like a scene. So a scene might be 5 pages.
Hmm.
And I'll just send that one scene and it'll be out of context, yes, but at least I'll get an understanding of how I write dialogue, how I write screen directions, how do I picture this whole just these 5 pages to go. And I don't know if that's enough or if that's too much than what they want, but that's how I've been doing it as of late.
That's so cool. So as far as like your work, like the copyrighted work, how long is the entire script? Like you're saying 5 pages, it makes this in like, is it like a,
It's the one that I just copyrighted, and it was the first time because I registered it with the Writers Guild, and I was really, really excited about it.
go
Um,
you?
it's 130 pages.
Damn. So it's like
Yeah.
front. like start to beginning or start to end, the whole thing,
Yeah.
all the dialogues.
But there's a lot of like space in scripts. There's a lot of space in between. So
What does that mean?
it,
Talk to me like I'm five.
um the formatting of scripts is really weird. There's a lot of like indentations, and the spacing is really spaced out. So even if it's 130 pages, if you were to just write it out like a normal Word document, it would not come to 130 pages. It might come out to like 70 pages. um
Oh, I
so
see, I see. Like
so
the actual
yeah,
writing.
the idea is that one page is 45 seconds to a minute. um so if you
Oh,
have a
okay.
hundred if you have a 130 page script, it's going to be a little bit less than 130 minutes, the movie itself.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
that's
So there's not a lot packed into that one page.
interesting.
Hmm.
That's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
And then, so you prefer writing over performing.
Uh, yeah, I like both for different reasons, but yeah.
Give me like the best and worst parts about writing and then the best and worst parts about performing. I'm just curious.
Oh, the best and worst parts about writing is if you don't really know, I mentioned earlier that like my brain only works at a certain time of night. If my brain is not working before that, it's like I'm stuck and you don't know where to go, and you don't
Hmm.
know like how you're going to progress the scene, or just it gets very difficult when you're in that mindset. You have to be, at least for me personally, I have to be in a very specific mindset to write content worth saving. um
Hmm.
because I delete everything. I'm like, I don't like this, this is horrible, I'm going to delete it. um so for me to be in that mindset is very difficult. I can't be one of those people who are just writing all the time and they're just putting out pages like all the time. And I don't know if I don't know any writer that actually does do that, but I'm sure they exist somewhere. And the best part about writing is that you have complete control over what you want to say. As a performer, you have to read someone else's work. You have to, and even if you don't really agree, or if you say, oh, well, maybe I'll say this line differently, you have to do your part as to like how the writer wants it to be acted. And
Yeah.
so you have more control, and and it's your story, it's enjoyable. I don't know if you're like me, but I love to live vicariously through characters that I see in movies and
Hmm.
TV shows.
Name one.
um uh
Is Alex?
Batman. Actually, no, I don't think I would like to live vicariously through Batman. I like to live vicariously through Alfred.
Ah, yes.
Because
He
he
is a
doesn't
baller.
do anything. He just like stands there.
He just has a lot of wisdom.
Yeah, and he's British. But yeah, you just have control over. And like Mindy Kaling said in one of her books, I believe I don't know what book it was, but she said that if you want to get anywhere in this industry, you have to write your own roles, because those opportunities will be very difficult to get if you don't write your own rules. So that's why she was in The Office. That was the Mindy Project. And now Never Have I Ever is the first time where she's just writing as a writer. But The Office, she started as a writer and she wrote herself into the show. And that's how she it was able
Did
to
not know that.
develop as a writer and as an actor. Which and that's my goal. Like I really do like acting, but I genuinely think that I'm not good enough for me to just be for me to just get picked up like that. I think I'll have to like push, like literally push myself in with my own writing.
Hmm.
um and the
So it's
word
kind of like,
and
is it complementing? Is it you're using acting to complement more of your writing to help you
Yeah.
grow as a writer? Is that how you see
Yeah.
acting?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good way of like describing it. And also having your writing help your acting, because you obviously uh, it's your words, so you know if it's going to, you know how you would want it to be said, you know how you would want it to be performed. So it kind of helps enhance the writing a little bit more too. Maybe if another actor read a specific line, it might not be, it might not sound the way you'd want it to sound.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
then, so you said writing wise, like you have to be in your specific mindset. Like when I get ideas for my podcast, like I get a topic and I write
Hmm.
shit down, but I don't like if none of it makes sense, if I have a certain idea, like I take something from it. But you're saying if you write something down and you're not in the right mindset, you crumple it all, like take nothing from it. Did I hear it correctly?
Um, I don't. It's not that I don't take nothing from it. I might copy paste like one or two lines, but yeah, I pretty much delete it, and that's a bad habit that I have. I need because I'm like I don't, and I hate clutter in
Oh, I
everything.
see.
So I don't want to like just save like different variations of the same
Hmm.
paragraph or something. So I'll just rewrite it and then delete it, rewrite it, delete the previous one, and then delete the previous one. But yeah, I should save them because you never know. I feel like it might be better than what I might have thought it was at a certain time. I don't know. It's a bad habit.
Hmm. And you're not dreaming this stuff, right? It's not like you dream about it and then write about it. You're like awake during these wide hours, like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Oh, I'm awake when I get those ideas, and sometimes I do dream about things and I write them down. Um, because I have very my dreams are like very clear. I'm able to remember them really well for some reason, and
Hmm.
I think it's because like I like rehash I do like I'm like previously on like I like in the morning
It's
I'm
like
just
an
like thinking
episode.
about my dream. Yeah. Um. So I actually dreamt a story now that I think about it. But yeah, I usually am awake during those
Hmm.
times. Yeah.
That's fascinating because I can never remember my dreams, but that's impressive that you can. Because if I don't like, at one point I did have kind of like a whatever journal where I would like write about my dreams, but that lasted
Hmm.
like less than 3 weeks because I was just like too discombobulated.
Oh yeah, I do that now, and I just think they're so funny. They're just so random. There's one where I dreamt that I was on Love Island, so I just literally wrote about me being on Love Island, like the show.
Oh, so you dreamt about that and then you wrote about it? As
Yeah,
in,
I wrote that I was on Love Island and that everybody on the show just wanted to be my friend and nobody wanted to couple up with me. It was
so it was a sad, it was a sad story.
yeah, and there happened to be like a body somewhere, but I don't like there's like a carpet. Like because I wrote it down. There's like a carpet. It's a Persian rug, and it's under it. There's a body.
Hmm.
But again, discombobulate. Like it doesn't. There's no correlation, and yet they're in the same dream.
So you kind of have to connect the pieces.
Yeah,
So, Kritika, you lived in Chicago for 4 years,
4
right?
years. Yeah,
4
yeah.
years. The other big entertainment cities being LA and NYC. So the
Hmm.
big three, basically. You lived in one of them. Give me your power rankings for the three of them and why.
The
What each city
power
means to
rankings.
you. Yeah, go one, two, three.
Um, so I think it would be kind of unfair because I've never lived in LA and New York. There's like a huge like if you talk to any person from Chicago, they're like, "Yeah, Chicago's the greatest. Go Bears!" Like, or they say "Bear down." Sorry. Or if you go to New York, they're like, "Yeah, New York," and then Los Angeles just is there. Um, but I don't know like they all have different purposes. Like Chicago is big on the theater scene, like Second City, Annoyance Theater, IO. Like a lot of people in the comedy industry were taught at those theaters versus in New York City. That's NBC has a large um, presence in New York City and versus LA, where it's this is where mainly the production companies are. There's a lot more space for
Hmm,
sound stages, and there's and you can have bigger houses too, which is always nice.
for
Um,
sure.
So if you talk to anyone from any city, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is the best city," but they all serve different purposes. They like there's like a saying where um, if you get Chicago's where you get good,
Okay.
and LA is where you get seen. So Chicago's
Ah,
where these performers develop, but then when they're IO, Second City, those people, they don't because it's so oversaturated. They have to go to like another place, which is also oversaturated, but in a different sense. Like there's just so many of us that want to enter this industry, and like it's difficult to get seen. So you have to like kind of bounce around to be seen, essentially.
all right. So you spent 4 years in Chicago. You're packing your
Mhm.
bags, LA or NYC.
Probably LA. I couldn't do the cold in Chicago. I
Ooh.
the cold really took a toll on me, and just being in the city and being in the subway and the rats and the the homeless men pissing on the platform floor, like I I I need a break from that. I really do like New York City, but I just need at least like a year to step away from that.
Well, honestly, the LA and the homeless problem down there has gotten worse and worse. I don't know if you've been
Damn
following,
it.
but
God. I thought it was pretty. I haven't been there in a while, so I don't really know. I'm planning on like moving out there in a little bit, but it's mainly the sun, I think. I
the
think
weather's
the
nice.
weather makes a huge difference. Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, like all the comedians, the major comedians that I follow, like Joe Rogan's not much of a comedian, but like podcast wise, like the community I listen to, like Rogan,
Hmm.
Theo Vaughn, Joey Diaz, who has crazy stories about Boulder, and like a bunch of these guys are moving out of LA. They're trying to start
Are
like a comedy.
are they what?
They're moving out of LA.
Oh, got you. Yeah.
Yeah, for like this trying to start comedy scenes in like Austin and
Hmm.
Nashville and like New Jersey area. So like, do you think coronavirus gives like people that opportunity to like brand out in other areas? Like LA is so overpopulated because you feel like all the comedy clubs or
Hmm.
acting areas and like opportunities there. Do you think it's diversified opportunity? Like, could you do what you're doing for longer in Denver? Like, would you be, is there a good scene here? I don't know.
You know what? I don't know, and I'm curious because I'm curious as to where it's going to go in 5 to 10 years, because like you said, it's so overpopulated. There's so many people. They don't even film so like things anymore in Los Angeles. Like there's a lot, like Warner Brothers has a huge studio in Vancouver. Disney works in Atlanta. Like
Hmm.
there's no room anymore. So, and I'm sure Denver being a large city, in the coming years it will become uh bigger, and now especially because technology is so accessible, like I'm able to film tapes just using my phone and it's still good quality, or having just like internet and stuff. I wonder if it's going to push out like that. Right now, everyone has told me you have to move out to LA or you have to move to
Mm.
New York. Like they're just like you have to, like you can't be in Denver, Colorado. Um
Hey, Colorado's not
yeah, I
bad.
know. It would be so easy if it was Denver. I would love to be in Denver, but I don't think it's going to last like that, because it's not possible. LA has become so expensive. New York has become so expensive. Even like prominent actors, a lot of them don't don't even live in those cities. They
Yeah,
either live outside, like in maybe outside New York in like Westchester, or um they they'll live in any random city in the thing, and they just travel back and forth.
true. And there seems to be like a mass exodus now out of California, like and I think NYC, because of like the great things about cities is like all the things you can do in the city and like the
Hmm.
vibrant feel it provides. But like it being locked down, I guess, really gets rid of those like benefits. And people were willing to put up with like much higher taxes. Like California's taxes insane. But like when
Oh
you're not
yeah.
getting those benefits for like 6, 7 months, because Rogan like got I think $100 million for a Spotify deal. So to avoid the tax, I think he dipped to Austin. And a lot of
Jeez, wow.
And I think that's why a lot of the other comedians are doing that too. Like a lot of the big
Hmm.
podcasters and comedians, they're doing the same thing. Just have a better
I
quality
don't.
of life.
That's so interesting because I don't know much about podcasts in general. Like I know I for the longest time I thought I was under the impression that they just made money off of advertisements, but there's a whole like um business to it. Like they have like apps
Mhm.
that you just pay and you can listen to anything any podcast through that, and then Spotify has its own system versus streams and everything. So I genuinely like don't know much about how podcasts work and how they make money and how the business side of it works. Um, but that's really interesting. You know, the tax in Chicago is 11%.
For income,
Yeah, the
sales
sales
tax,
tax. Yeah. So you're
that's
saying
crazy.
the tax in LA and New York is bad? Like Chicago is just as bad.
Oh yeah, probably because they get you somehow, right? But I think California's income tax is by far the highest in the country.
Oh, is it? I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised.
And so I think there was a mass exodus, not just like of entertainment industry people, like
Hmm.
billionaires just leaving the country. I'm sorry, not the country, but the cities.
Oh
So
yeah. I
they're losing out on a lot of capital.
there are billionaires who live in like in Denver now. Like I could be wrong. I think it's Pepsi, like the CEO of Pepsi. I think she lives in Denver.
She's
It might
Indian
not be
too.
Yeah,
In
I know.
in
My dad gets so excited about it.
Indra
He's like
Nui or
the
something.
CEO. Yeah, he's like the CEO of Google, the CEO of like Microsoft. They're all Indian. He gets very, very excited about it.
And then there's us. Yeah, how motivating
Yeah,
is
I
that?
know.
I love it.
At least you have a job. I'm like, I'm an artist, so I'm just like waiting.
All right, Kritika, as we're approaching the end of the convo, you
Hmm.
get to have a 2-hour dinner with any celebrity from the industry. Who's it going to be and why?
Okay, follow-up question. Is it going
There's
to
booze
be out
involved.
of curiosity or is it going to be ju as a way to progress my own career?
Ah, give me both.
Oh shit. Um, I don't know. Who would you do? I need to think.
Who would I do?
Yeah.
I honestly would have done Chris D'Elia, but he got himself in some major shit, so I can't say that anymore. But it would just be another comedian. I'm trying to think of Bill Burr. I would love
Oh
to have a
yeah.
conversation with Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Just the way he thinks and the way he triggers people, but he's so unapologetically himself is just fascinating to me.
F is for Family is really great. I don't know if you've seen that show. I'm not a
Mm.
big fan of animated comedies, but I like that show. I think I would like to have a comedian at the table too, but I don't. A lot of comedians are assholes because they're so blunt and they're so honest. I don't need that kind of honesty in my life. Okay, I want someone to lie to me. Um, so I don't. I think
Imagine laughing for like 2 hours straight, though.
yeah,
Ah,
but
yeah,
laugh. But what if you're laughing at your own expense?
fair enough. Touche.
You know.
Touche.
Um, yeah, because like the comedians that I know, they're either like really mean or they're very shy.
Mm.
They're not exactly like the rowdiest kid at the table. Um, the idea of like the class clown, I think that just applies to like the knowing kid in class, not necessarily the funniest kid in class.
Mm.
But if I were to meet any celebrity and have dinner with them, I would probably meet Viola Davis. I think she's
Ah.
fantastic. Yeah, I just admire her so much. I think she's one, an amazing actress, and two, like she just seems really fun.
I
I
like
have
that.
a huge crush on her. And if it's to like progress my career, um any rich white guy who wants a younger ethnic girlfriend.
Just golding it out there. I love it.
Yep.
Get Christopher Nolan on the phone.
Is he into younger ethnic women?
Nah, I'm just kidding. He's just a major director, so I figured.
Yeah, yeah. And he doesn't have to be a director, just anybody with money, and they'll just throw it at me. Because I was watching Succession,
So you just want a
and
sugar daddy? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, basically. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure there's a lot of them in the Hollywood industry.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I was just watching Succession, and one of the characters in it is dating. Well, she was initially a call girl, but she calls herself a playwright, and he basically just like throws money at her and puts her play on to Broadway. And I want a guy like that.
All my listeners will now make sure you get in the right direction with the rich white guy with money.
Yes, thank you.
Loads of money.
That's the dream.
All right, Krutika, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It was a
Yes.
pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.